Our meeting is now open for the sharing of testimonies of healing through the study and practice of Christian Science. Tom from Iowa, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Lenny, for those excellent readings. They're very inspiring. During last week's service, I felt burdened and sort of heavy, and I didn't know why. I kept listening and praying. The suggestion came to stop listening to the service and listen to the recording later and pray on my own, but I saw that this was a trick and not my real desire. And then at hymn 244, when the lines talked about burdens falling away and how the heart is made glad, and as these were sung by the congregation, the burden did indeed fall away, and I was totally restored. Thank you so much for this church. This was a healing I had last week during the Wednesday evening service. Have a good night.
Thank you. Mara from Mississippi, go ahead, please.
Hello. Thank you so much, Lenny, for the beautiful reading. I'm very grateful to be here tonight and to be a part of this meeting. I'm so grateful that I found the Plainfield Christian Science Independent Church, and I'm so happy for all I'm learning. It's a great feeling to look back on my life before finding Plainfield Church and to notice all the progress I've made in understanding God and Christian Science. This past week, a family member from Italy passed away. Learning that God is life and our lives are eternal has helped me so much in dealing with this situation. It's a comforting feeling to know that our loved ones are with us and God, even though our mortal senses can't see it. Also, I've been understanding animal magnetism better and how all these hurtful, negative thoughts that I felt about other family members and their reactions to the situation were not a part of me or thoughts from God, so I don't have to listen to them. My practitioner once explained to me how our real family are not biological brothers and sisters, but those who do the will of God. Also, the testimony that Bruce gave last week was very helpful to me when he explained that we shouldn't let the past define who we are, and he gave a quote from Science and Health. The beautiful, good, and the pure constitute our ancestry. Listening to all the weekly testimonies is such a great way to work through our own human problems that come up. I'm grateful to my practitioner who is always there to set me straight, support me, help and pray for me and my family. I'm so grateful for these Wednesday evening meetings where we can learn from others that are using practical Christian Science. I absolutely love and agree with what Izzy said last week. She said, "What an amazing adventure it is every day to be living Christian Science." Thank you so much and good night.
Thank you. Jeremy.
I'm very grateful to be a member of this church and for all I am learning here about Christian Science. As of today, I've been at this church for 11 years, and I just want to take a moment to say how grateful I am for this church, taking me in and giving me a place and a purpose. In the time immediately before I was brought here, I was at my lowest point, and I was ready to end it all. But now I know it was God and the prayers of my practitioner which paved the way for me to come to Plainfield and start this new life that I'm so grateful for. What a wonderful unfoldment it has been, filled with much needed healings and blessings, and a lot of challenges and opportunities, and good work and hard lessons. I have changed so much, all for the better. I honestly hated myself before coming here, and now I have learned step by step to see myself as a child of God, and to embrace the joyous understanding that God created us all for a good reason. I'm so grateful for this church. And to anyone who says that Christian Science is not effective, all I can say is that you have not put in the honest effort, because I was lost and useless and suicidal, and now I am where I'm supposed to be and useful to God. There was really nothing special about me before coming here, other than that true sense of myself being a child of God, as we all are. So the reason I must have progressed this far has to be the quality and pureness of Christian Science that is taught here. Thank you to God, Christ Jesus, Mary Baker Eddy, my practitioner, and this church for all of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have a testimony from Izzy in England.
Good evening. I have so many things to be grateful for that Christian Science has given me, and so much that I am so grateful to have learned through this church. One of these learnings has been to learn to trust completely in God, good, even if it means waiting patiently for goodness to unfold. But that doesn't mean waiting inactively. I have learned that it is my right and also my responsibility to expect good from every situation. Some time ago on the round table, the life of George Muller was discussed. I watched a film about him on YouTube, and this really was quite life-changing. He sold his home and belongings and relied solely on prayer. As a result, he opened refuges for hundreds, probably thousands of destitute children and orphans, and he saved many, many lives, all through having complete trust in God and expecting, almost demanding, good to unfold. Since then, I have worked to have trust and to wait patiently with the absolute expectation that good will unfold. This was echoed in a testimony given by Florence, which was sent in the daily email today, about waiting in trust and patience. Thank you for highlighting this testimony. I have witnessed a small example of this recently. Last week, I and another lady rescued a duckling from a very busy road. I sent messages out to friends and groups to see if anyone else had a duckling or had any ducklings. I didn't have any luck, but someone had a broody hen, and hens can raise ducklings. So the plan was to put the duckling under the hen's wing that night, and then at least it would be warm and safe while I waited to hear if anyone else had ducklings so that it could be with its own kind. Back came all the negative responses. I knew the duckling was an expression of infinite mind and was forever safe in divine love, so it could only be in its right place, and only good could unfold for it. Eventually, someone connected me with a lady who was getting some ducklings in a few days. We agreed to speak when she had picked them up, and this little one could go in with them. It seemed perfect. That night, I held the duckling as we waited for it to get dark enough. It quickly fell asleep. It was so young it must just have hatched that day, and it must have been exhausted after its adventures. As I held it cocooned in my hands, the duckling vibrated gently. I realized this must be how they communicate with their mothers, tucked tightly into the protective embrace of her feathers, and so another quiet miracle of creation has been gently unfolded to me. A few days later, the lady called and said she hadn't been able to get any ducklings. It seemed there were none anywhere. So I held to the absolute knowledge that only good could unfold. I knew and argued that I could not have been put in the right place at the right time to rescue this duckling, only for things not to work out perfectly. Soon the hen came out of her broody coma and she began to really bond with the duckling. Her owner told me she'd never actually had any chicks before. I started to feel very guilty about separating them, but they were needing a bigger enclosure. It came to me that instead of separating them, I could take them both to the original lady. Even if she couldn't find any of the ducklings, she had older ducks, which this one would be able to mix with eventually. So the hen's owner was happy for her to move temporarily, so I took them both. Yesterday I got a message to say that she had finally found some more ducklings and that this little one now had 3 siblings. The hen had accepted them all immediately, truly relishing her experience of motherhood. Looking back, it's so clear to see divine power at work, working always for good. If I had taken the duckling straight away, we would have separated it from the hen, although they would no doubt have been fine under a heat lamp. But by the process being delayed, God, good, allowed my human thinking to catch up with the outcome of good. Now, 4 little ducklings will thrive under the love and protection of a mother's wing, and a dear old hen is finally able to raise a brood. Thank you so much for everything that we are taught here. Thank you so much for the amazing website, for the round tables, for the services, the wonderful teachings, and the healings and the absolute dedication of you all.
Thank you. Bruce.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I know Lenny read tonight a passage from Science and Health that says that truth is affirmative and confers harmony. And I can really attest to that, but I also hope that if everybody stops to think about it, finds it as positive and encouraging as I do. And it reminds me of an experience I had quite a number of years ago, which proved that truth really is affirmative and it does confer harmony. I was discussing with a teacher in our church at a time an issue that had come up, and I stated it in such a way that it was a problem and not exactly the best approach to address this subject. And she just simply says, "Oh, is that really so? What a shame." And everybody who heard it had a big laugh, and I got to admit I had a laugh as well. But it broke the mesmerism, and sure enough, there was an answer for just doing just the right thing. So it doesn't really pay to get too bent out of shape over things that appear like they got problems and need resolutions. But it helped me because sometime later, I was working on another project, and it looked like this thing needs a resolution. I don't really know what to do here. And I remember what the teacher said the last time. "Oh, really? What a shame." Not so. And I could just remember saying to myself, there is an answer here. And I know that there is. And I put a smile on my face, as if to thank God, even before I knew what the resolution was. And sure enough, it came to light. And it just proves that no matter how things may look on the outside, truth really is at work. And it is affirmative, and it does confirm harmony. So I'm very grateful to learn this lesson.
Thank you. Imogen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this beautiful testimony meeting and for those truly inspired readings, Lenny. That was just so perfect. I got so much from this today. The beautiful hymns and organ. Tonight I would like to thank this very precious, independent Christian Science Church for the decades of prayer that has been uttered here in pure Christian Science to bless the world. We've all benefited from this silent watch prayer that's been going out from this independent church. I've been so blessed by these watch prayers from this church, but tonight I would like to express my sincere gratitude for the prayer that has been and is blessing and saving our whole beautiful world, God's beautiful world. We touched down in this blessed land of God, this blessed Christian country, the United States of America, at around 1 a.m. on a warm spring evening. Immediately we landed, I felt the purest sense, a quiet yet direct change in my prayer. And I found the most pure and blessed atmosphere as I came closer and closer physically to this independent Christian Science church, a deep release of thought and a great relief to be here in this holy congregation. Yes, I cried as I met the beautiful people belonging to the dearest voices I have loved for over 3 years, listening to this church in the night from Australia, so loving. But a deeper cry because I felt a release and I felt closer to God. Truly, this is holy ground at this dear independent church. Through the Christly love of the members here, and at dear Linda's suggestion, one day I was able to sit quietly in this church. No one else was here. I sat on that warm afternoon in this precious, quiet church, and I prayed and I told God that I loved him. Truly, I felt God's mighty love and joy and a softening of my thought into a towering strength of God's presence. I felt ministered truly by his angels, almost like a tuning fork vibrating in tune. I forever love our God in Christian Science, and truly, this is holy ground here at this independent church. And seeing how dedicated everyone is here is a blessing to me. I mean, Everyone has a job to do, a role to play, and there's a good pace. There's no dawdling here. These are people who really love God and really love Christian Science to be working as hard as they do. Sunday's roundtable and service was my first experience of being here physically for those two events, which are back-to-back. Well, everyone just works so perfectly together here to get those two events working beautifully. And dear Jeremy does so much work across two computer systems for both the roundtable and the church service to ensure that both spaces are set up beautifully for a smooth transition. People are praying here faithfully the whole time to support God's work here. Now, I wasn't quick enough this first time, so I missed the first hymn of the service, so I will definitely be moving faster next time. Tonight, I do thank this faithful congregation, dearest Plainfield Independent, for the Christly work and pure Christian Science prayer that has been and is blessing the whole world. Thank you to our holy practitioners and teachers at this church. Thank you, God, for your patience and your love. You are so very kind, so loving. Thank you, Christ Jesus, for your example and sacrifice. Thank you, Mary Baker Eddy, for discovering and articulating the divine science, Christian Science, so that we can understand and we can use it for the benefit of all. And thank you all so much, and so much love to you all.
Thank you. Barbara or Ken from Pennsylvania, go ahead, please.
Hi. There are so many things to be grateful to Plainfield Church Independent for and to God for Plainfield. Last week, high on my list became the book 500 Watching Points, specifically watch number 1, pointing out the essential element of joy, whatever the challenge we may be facing. For those who may not already know, the first sentence of that watch reads, "Watch, lest you attempt to do anything in Christian Science from any standpoint except that of joy." Thank you, God, for making this book and so many others available to us through Plainfield, and for waking my husband and I up from a dream of doom and gloom and to our absolute need of joy first. No wonder we were dragging around, believing things were so hopeless. Gloominess is not honesty. It is a denial of God's presence, power, and love. A good night to all and a joyous one.
Thank you. Linda.
Thank you very much for those readings this evening. I'm very grateful I found the Plainfield Independent Church and for the teachings provided here. There are so many opportunities to learn about God and who He made us to be. I'm very grateful for the Wednesday meetings, the roundtables, Bible studies, weekly Unity watches, and reading material. Recently, I have been able to eat some foods freely that I had to cut out of my diet for many years because of reactions. I've been able to eat these foods several times now without any problems at all. I've been so grateful for this, and I know that this healing took place as I was working to practice the precepts and the discipline taught here step by step, and to learn to express more patience, humility, tender-heartedness, and to keep pace with God. I'm very grateful for my regular Plainfield practitioner support and the instruction that I'm getting on how to live Christian Science and her prayers, which have redeemed me many times. I'm very grateful to our God, to Mary Baker Eddy, to Christ Jesus, and this independent church. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth from New Hampshire, go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for those really terrific, inspiring readings and all the wonderful testimonies. I would like to express my gratitude tonight for an opportunity that I had last week to be in the right place at the right time. I was coming out of the grocery store when I noticed a woman outside at the entrance. seemingly in distress. I had seen her on the way in about a half an hour before. She seemed very upset. It came to me to offer her a ride somewhere, and she replied yes, that she did need a ride. I often pray to know how to serve God, and I felt strongly that this impulse to help was an answer to prayer. For a brief moment, I wondered if this was a wise thing to do. We are often admonished of this kind of behavior being unsafe, but that was mortal mind, and I was listening to God, and I was being obedient to my understanding, the understanding that God has made man perfect. The 30-minute ride to take her to her parents' house was never silent or awkward. The practical truths that flowed in our conversation seemed to be just what was needed, and I was so grateful for them. She seemed so as well, reaching over to hug me when she got out of the car. I'm so thankful to God for the angel messages that he supplies when we're listening and tells us what to say and what to do. Thank you so much, and good night.
Thank you. Luba from Ohio, go ahead, please.
Good evening. I'm so grateful for the positive changes in my life since coming to Plainfield and getting a truer understanding of Christian Science. This church has brought the world closer to me, and I'm grateful for so many testimonies from outside of this country. It makes me aware of how much we share in common with our fellow men. Also, the loving dedication, patience, and influence of my practitioner has been a great blessing to me. Above all, I'm most grateful for God's continual protection and guiding light. And thank you so much for tonight's reading, and I'm so grateful to be here.
Thank you. Shardy?
Hello. Tonight, I would like to express gratitude to Mrs. Eddy and our church for teaching us about the Bible and how to interpret it spiritually. It wasn't until being a part of this church that I progressed in my love and understanding for the Bible. An example would be what Mrs. Eddy wrote about Genesis and the Apocalypse, chapters 15 and 16 in Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. Here is a little quote from page 577. The Lamb's wife presents the unity of male and female as no longer two wedded individuals, but as two individual natures in one. And this compounded spiritual individuality reflects God as Father-Mother, not as a corporeal being. How beautiful. That was a quote. Our Bible studies have also contributed to my deeper understanding, as well as the weekly lessons that are like none other that I have read. So I thank you, Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, and thank you to my practitioner, who is always teaching us and sharing things from the Bible and our books, our study books, our pastor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mishaela from Canada, go ahead, please.
These testimony meetings are an immeasurable treasure, I find. Thank you very much for the readings tonight. Many times I have heard Jeremy testify about how he finds divine solutions for any arising issues, even with technical equipment, by listening to God. Thank you, Jeremy. This has helped me to listen to God in a recent incident, although not immediately, I have to admit. I had problems with my printer. The colors didn't align and the print looked blurred. I was under much pressure because I had to print a lot of prints and they needed to be in perfect quality. I tried several things, searched the internet for solutions, but nothing worked. Even worse, a second problem appeared. While this was happening, there was a voice that said, exchange the yellow toner. But the supply level showed it was still 20% full. My resourceful self didn't want to exchange it because I didn't want to let 20% of the toner go to waste. So I kept trying different things until finally I obeyed and exchanged the yellow toner, and the next sprint was perfect. What I learned from this is that my human logical and resourceful thinking is not the truth, but rather stubbornness. Instead of trusting a printer's supply level report or my human reasoning, I should trust the still small voice of God. I could have saved a lot of time and test sprints that are all waste now. I am grateful for this experience because it showed me that, and here's a quote from Science and Health, that selfishness tips the beam of human existence towards the side of error, not towards truth. Denial of the oneness of mind throws our weight into the scale, not of spirit, God, good, but of matter. I also thank my practitioner for always reminding me of the straight and narrow path, and who is always willing to help in any situation. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank you. Tony or Lenny from Georgia, go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you. Imogen, it's just been wonderful having you here and listening to your testimonies live. You said something, the difference you felt, the quality of thought, being here and then being in the church, reminded me of when I was really in between two churches. I was in between Plainfield and the church I grew up in. And when I was first introduced to the church, I was told that I needed to start reading the Plainfield lessons. And I noticed immediately that it was different in that we read all of the Bible first, and then we read Science and Health. And I had grown up with a very different format. And I came to really love and appreciate the inspiration behind that subtle difference. And I've really come to appreciate the motive, the pure motive to be led by God and not be influenced by any other, be wrongfully influenced in the making of a lesson. And what I mean by that is the lessons that we read here, oftentimes they deliver a rebuke. And I'm so grateful that the lesson writers are inspired by God to deliver the message. And these lessons don't hold back. And I am just so grateful for the thought behind the lessons. And that's, Imogen talked about she could feel the difference, coming here. Well, I felt the difference in our lessons, and it continues to this day. And I'm deeply grateful for the effort to be spiritually inspired to get that message, to create these beautiful lessons. So I'm very grateful to be able to work with those each and every day, and grateful to be here tonight, and grateful to have heard those readings. Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Lenny, for the beautiful readings tonight. And tonight I have two testimonies, one from Germany And she says that when I was a young girl, my father, who believed that creativity and Christian Science had much to do with each other, let me share in his work as a landscape architect and teacher. We would often sit and work together to find metaphysical solutions to very real seeming problems. When he worked on blueprints and wanted to bring his ideas into form, I saw that relying on God is the best option any of us have. I saw many healings take place, from cuts from a lawnmower or hedge trimmer, ink cuts, power shortages and surges, clients paying late, and many more. I saw God meeting every need, and this is what is important today. We worked with the Science and Health, and I would read this very dear book to him as he would solve problems and remind me that God had solved these problems. When the answers would come, it was a joyful thank you that I often heard. So I know that this science, and it is a science, works. I remember the many healings I experienced in childhood of bullying, being treated badly for being different and foreign. We took up and saw that we must see as God sees and let go of judgment and resentment. We often spoke of inclusivity and that God only wants the best for all ideas, all of his ideas. For this, I'm very grateful, and to have these relatives who saw healing in Christian Science as a way of life. Recently, I have tried to find museums and galleries in Hamburg where I teach 2 groups of small children drawing and painting. When the people whom I contacted learned where the school was located, they did not want to have them come. So with more difficulties that came up, including parents not sending the permission slip back, I went to God and asked my practitioner for support. She said God's will be done, and she would support me. And she also gently led me to Science and Health, which we often use as our base of study at the round table and in Christian Science. I opened the Science and Health and read it. I then was led to speak with the director. The deputy director is who I spoke to because the director was off. The deputy director at first did not want to see anything but obstacles, but the small truth that 2 + 2 is 4 prevailed, and 5 children could go to the museum with me. Step by step, God led us back and forth and on time. I am grateful that fear was broken for the flood tides of truth to open us all up to this inclusive possibility. And then one from Kenya. He says, last year, we, the directors of our Christian Science Charity School in Kenya, made a detailed application to a Christian Science fund in the UK. At first, the fund said that education was not normally in their line of donating. However, they then kindly gave us a one-off lovely, generous donation. We love the story in the Bible of supply in unusual ways, showing God's great love for his dear children everywhere. Suddenly, quite out of the blue, this same fund have just written to us in June saying that they have decided to give us another large donation. We did not even request it. It came so effortlessly, generously, and lovingly. As Mrs. Eddy says, divine love always has met and always will meet every human need. This abundant gift will really bless our joyous school children. We are so grateful to God, to Christ Jesus, to Mary Baker Eddy, and to the Plainfield Church for the abundance of God's blessing. And I must say, I am very happy to be here tonight to listen to all these testimonies and to listen to the readings, of course, and the hymns as well. Happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Gary.
Thank you, Lenny, for those fine readings on the fact that God is indeed adequate to unclasp every hold, adequate to take care of all of our needs. I'm so grateful to be learning in Christian Science that God does indeed take care of all of our needs, even when we're not aware of it, even when we don't even think He's taking care of them, and even when we're not grateful for the fact that He is taking care of it. He is taking care of our needs. And I'm learning to be aware of that and to be grateful for it. I had an experience a while ago that that speaks to this. I was working with my business partner, returned to our office after being away for several days. He was on a business trip. And when he came back, he found that his computer wouldn't work. And he played around with it and couldn't get it to work. And this is a guy who is very smart about computers. So if he can't figure it out, very few people could. But anyway, so he immediately started to think of all the things that he should check, and he even thought about setting up a backup computer, which would take a lot of time. Well, that day, I had some meetings to go to in New York, and I had called a practitioner for help for those meetings. And the practitioner told me to remember that there was only one mind in control of everything, not many different minds. So I went to my meetings with this thought, and I thought, that's even true for Tom's computer as well, that there is only one mind in control and no confusing other minds or equipment that could interfere with the control of the one mind. Well, a little bit later, I got a very excited call from my partner telling me that the most amazing thing had happened. He said, shortly after I left, someone in our office area who works for a different company had called his computer repairman, who came right over to fix their computer. And while he was there, my partner asked him if he would mind taking a look at his computer. Well, he agreed to do so, and within 5 minutes, my partner's computer was fixed and running. So he was so excited in this call because it seemed like such a fortuitous thing. But he said how extremely lucky we were that this guy came in when he did. Well, I had to chuckle, and I responded to my partner that, well, it wasn't luck. It was God looking out for us, and we should be very grateful for that. And my business partner knows me well enough to, and is a Christian himself, not a Christian Scientist, but very Christian, and he agreed wholeheartedly and accepted that. So I was very grateful for God's care in this matter, for the work of the practitioner in getting my thought straight about it. I'm grateful for Mary Bakeretti for what she has done for mankind in giving us this science of Christianity. And I'm so grateful for what I'm learning about Christian Science in this church. So good to be with you tonight.
Thank you. Mary.
Good evening, everyone. A few things to read. The first from Canada. Thank you, Plainfield, for My Love is the Liberator magazine, which I received with joy today in the mail. It's a blessed theme, the first commandment, and it is timeless and universal, with much gratitude. And then she also mentions this beautiful poem by Mrs. Eddy. He who hath made thee whole will keep thee day by day. He who hath spoken to thy soul hath many things to say. He who hath gently taught, yet more will make thee know. He who hath wonders wrought, still greater things will show. He loveth always, faileth never, then rest in him today, forever. And this is a testimony from New Hampshire. I was working in the kitchen while listening to the weekly testimony meeting. I was using a long knife to take out lemon seeds, and it slipped through and cut me right between my fingers. I grabbed a towel and stood listening to the meeting. What a perfect thing to have on at that moment. I refused to believe there was an accident. I also refused to look at my hand. Soon I felt no pain, and I continued to do my work. I never checked my hand because I knew all was well. I am so grateful to prove God's care and to have perfect demonstrations like these. Thank you. And then this testimony from Massachusetts. Last Sunday's roundtable discussing the importance of science and health was particularly meaningful to me. In the past, I had tried a number of times to read Science and Health, but just couldn't do it. I would literally devour the writings of early workers, but not Science and Health. I knew it contained the truth, but I didn't like the writing style. I found the writing to be just disjointed and the sentences too dense. I couldn't concentrate and would often just fall asleep. Then about a month ago, I felt a prompting to try again, and this time I had a totally different experience. The pages were alive, and passages I'd often read before were suddenly illumined. What is more, I knew that every time I would come back to these passages, they would hold ever deeper meaning. It's like a masterpiece in music. Every time you listen, you hear something you didn't hear before. I now read Science and Health first thing for an hour every morning, even before I've had my breakfast. It's become my favorite hour of the day. I never get through more than 3 or 4 pages, and often it's only 2. Yes, the sentences are dense. But I take every sentence and glean from it everything I can at this stage of my growth. It's a wonderful breakthrough for me in what is not an easy journey and an incredible blessing. I revere Mrs. Eddy for her purity of consciousness that enabled her to be a transparency for this healing truth. I'm so grateful to this Plainfield Church for the many avenues it offers for spiritual growth, and a special thanks to my practitioner for her ongoing support and encouragement on this pathway from sense to soul. And that testimony made me so incredibly happy to hear that breakthrough of the resistance that sometimes comes in reading Science and Health. It must be overcome because there's such tremendous good in that book. In reading something that Gilbert Carpenter wrote, who worked in Mrs. Eddy's home for a year, he writes, Mrs. Eddy was not only the author of her works, but the one who authorized them. That is, she established beyond cavil their correctness and demonstrated that they were not of a human origin, but divine. She might have well said, My dearly beloved brethren, I give you these teachings and assure you that in them you are safe, because I guarantee that they came from God. Therein you may gain a knowledge of Christian Science that is correct and demonstrable. As you read and study them, you need have no doubt nor fear, since you are studying what was written through inspiration by God not man. And that is so true. We have such a privilege to have that textbook. And how wonderful this woman went from not being able to read it to reading it an hour every morning and getting so much from it. And so we all should do. Appreciate and be grateful the healing truth that is in that book. Just like to say briefly, I'm very grateful for this meeting, those beautiful readings, and all your testimonies. I always think on a Wednesday night, the hymn, "Come let us sing, praising our God and our King. Shall we be silent? Ah, never." Everyone have a good night.
Thank you.